Oh, great. Hi, everyone. Well, first of all, thanks, Gannett, for doing this series. It's very, very interesting. I still distinctly remember about a group of about 10 of us students at the Kushi Institute just a few weeks before we graduated. This is back in 1985, and we were sitting there at the Beckett House, in Massachusetts. It was our third semester, and we were all about to graduate. And we were, by that point, we'd learned a lot, and we thought, well, we should get together in about 10 years from now and see, maybe, and then even 20 years from now, and compare notes and basically report back to each other. Hey, how did the experiment go? How is it going? Did you get sick from anything? And what was the process you used to recover? What additional tricks did you learn? And what still holds true from what we've learned, and what were some of the things that you found that did not work. And and then also to be honest and be able to say, what were we taught that just turned out to not be true for our own experience? What turned out to just not work for us? Because, after about 9 months of studying at the KI and learning from all these incredible teachers, that's what we realized, that this philosophy of life and this philosophy of food and well-being was really an experiment. And we were all kind of each our own walking petri dish, and that the next goal would really be to see what works, and how does this apply to our life? So, that's what Macrobiotics was about, becoming aware of that we had a lot more control over the function of our bodies and of our health. And, the object was to go out and try it out and see. So that was 35 years ago. And the students we never all got together and did that. So I just really want to thank you, Gannett, for allowing me personally to finally check in and record what my 35-year experiment has been so far, what I have learned, and what has continued to work for me, what did not work for me, and how things are going. So thanks. I think a little background might help. I came from a very small town, rural town in Wisconsin, population about 2,300. And I was born in 1956. So I was raised in the 60s on a diet that, as any American knows, was very modern, very tang, and a lot of new inventions, space age things, a lot of canned foods, a lot of junk foods, a lot of milk. I came from, Wisconsin, the dairy state. A lot of sugar. We just had no access at all to alternative thinking back then. And it never even crossed, any of our minds that something was wrong. That this was not an ordinary way of living. And it really stayed that way for me until I actually dropped out of college after my first semester, and I hitchhiked out to Colorado to find work in the mountains and mountain towns and work at ski areas. And it was really there that I started to meet people who were learning about alternative ways of eating and living. And it was really there that I remember renting a cabin in the mountains, and I was working at a local ski area, and there was this hippie woman next to me, and she had all these books. And that's where I first got introduced to George Oshawa and some of the early ones. And she had books on everyone back, I can't remember some of the authors, but there were some great authors from the 1800s and 1930s and so forth. And I read them all, and I immediately gravitated to that whole diet disease, diet health connection. It just made a lot of sense to me. And I, even without knowing how to cook at all, I started to play with some of the, ideas there. And I was a big searcher, like a lot of people back then in that period. And I really wanted to explore every alternative I could find. And that included, alternatives in work, on how to make money, how to travel. And I found myself in Wyoming, where I learned how to be a carpenter, and I was able to buy an old house and sell it 18 months later for about $15,000 in profit. And with that money, I immediately took off for what ended up being a 3-year hitchhiking trip around the world, including, I spent about 2 months in Israel on a kibbutz, Shar Hagalan, which is near the Kinneret, up right near the Jordan border there. And, it was just this giant exploration. And I was meeting others of the similar ilk of myself. We were all kind of exploring different ways of thinking, different ways of being, all that. And it was extraordinary time for me to look at all this. And this is what's great about when you're in your 20s, you're just an open-ended question. And I was so interested in all of it. So, I kept traveling. I spent a year in Africa. I ended up living actually in South Africa and building custom kitchens there. And I sailed over to Australia. And it was really in Australia where I met some people who were living hardcore natural foods, learning a lot about these things that I realized, and they were also into massage. I got introduced to massage for the first time. I thought, I want to do all that. That's what I want to do. So, in fact, I remember during that trip, I got off a train one time and there was a guy, it was an old grizzly traveler. He probably was 40 at the time. And I came down and sat next to him, and we started talking. And I don't know how the conversation turned, but I said, I think I was reading a book on nutrition. And I said, I've actually been reading about this guy, George Oshawa. And he goes, oh, I'm actually from I forget where it was, some northern European country. And he says, I used to attend George Oshawa workshops. And so I met George and hung out with him and had dinner with him and everything. And I forget, it was like in 66 or something like that. And I was so intrigued. And he was great. He actually said, yeah, go ahead and learn everything. But, you can get to be too pure. And I remember being quite taken back by that. And I thought, oh, okay. But I remembered that all those years later, remembering that guy. So anyways, I got back to the States and I was looking around for, where could I learn all this stuff? And I was kind of looking for a combination of a school that would teach both nutrition and, massage. And this was back when the East-West Journal was being passed around. It was a monthly publication. And that's where I first saw an ad about the Kushi Institute. And I remember calling them and saying, yep, they had a shiatsu program. So I applied. I sent them money. I think it was like $600 for the semester. And that was it. I drove to Brookline in 1984, and I lived at the Ken Burns house, for any of you who were knew that period, Ken Burns study house. And then I also went and lived at the Isabel Marin house, which was up on top of the hill there. I forget the name of the road. It might have been Brookline Road. I can't remember. So this was 1984. So our teachers back then were like Mark Van Couwenberg, Steve Gagne, Bill Tara. I think Bill Spears taught a class. I met his wife, John Mann, Wendy Esco, and Ed, and even Aveline and Michio taught some of the classes there. And we even actually had Shizuko Yamamoto come in and teach a couple of days of shiatsu. So we were surrounded by really, really good, long, weathered teachers. And we were also the second semester. We were the second group to attend the new Beckett property. We spent about 6 weeks there as our last semester. So it was around that time too. I was becoming a voracious reader. It's one of the things I developed when I was traveling overseas. Is I always had books, and I was just sucking up books and taking notes and learning things. And one of the most fascinating topics that I came across was just the ideas around belief systems and mindsets of thought, and how human beings love ideologies, and how ideologies are great as guideposts, but how much they can trap you into, in your search for truth. And the idea that any system or any thought or structures could be the one and only answer. And that was really, really good for me at that time, because I was kind of susceptible to that. When you're young, you're looking for like the absolute truth to things. And I kept thinking someone's got all the truth. Someone has to have all the answers. So those books were really important to me. And I was also learning about language and logical fallacies and linguistics and language. And I remember trying to read this really difficult book. I think it was actually recommended to me by one of my students or one of my fellow students there at the KI. It was a book called General Semantics. Maybe no one's ever read it. It's quite an obscure book. It's by a guy named Alfred Korzybski. Probably the most difficult book I ever read in my life. And I didn't get a lot of it. But one of the great things that I got out of that was that he really pointed out how difficult language is to come to give everybody the same sense of what each word means. This was really important for me because I started to see we are oftentimes communicating with each other and we think we are all in agreement with what something means. And oftentimes that's not the case at all. And I also learned from that book and from the subsequent books I read about how it's so easy for us to be able to label something. I'm a Republican, I'm a socialist, I'm a this, I'm a that, I'm a macrobiotic, and to think that we know what that means. And this was especially important because one of the things we discussed as students there was how difficult it was to even come up with what is the definition of macrobiotics, because at some point you kind of figure out it's a pretty open-ended question. And anyone who tries to say, well, no, what it means is great life. Well, what the heck does that mean? Or no, it's eating natural foods. Okay, what does that mean? So it was great because it really got me scratching my head and started to dig a lot deeper into like, what are we really doing here? So, and in fact, around this time, and I thought of this story because, Gannett, you interviewed Lenny Jacobs, I think last week or a couple of weeks. I was watching it, and it was such a heartwarming thing to remember him. He was so instrumental for me because he only taught 1 or 2 classes, but I remember, and maybe Lenny will write me and yell at me for saying this, but I remember him, he was kind of edgy and he always seemed like a little irritated or something at the time. And I have this distinct memory of Lenny Jacobs coming into one of our night classes, the classes that would start after dinner. We'd go from like 6 to 9 or something. And it was almost like, he'd been pressed to do the class right then or something, but I think there was something else going on. But he started the class by saying, he looked at us and he said, how many of you have tried, have you eaten recently some of the Concord grapes that are growing around here? And I remember at the time, we were learning that, fruit isn't really a good thing. Raw food isn't really a good thing. And so he was kind of like this wild man. We're looking at each other, go, and I'll never forget that. All those years later, I remember we were all being taken back for it, but I knew he was trying to say, what are you guys doing here? Are you really following everything just because it's being told to you? Or are you going out and actually experimenting with your own body? And he went on to kind of wax poetically about how delicious Concord grapes were growing around here. And it had an effect on me. I'm telling you, it had an effect on me big time. So that's kind of the background of the whole of what what I was learning back then and how I got to that point, and how when I left, I was kind of in this open-ended question, like, well, how much of what I just learned is actually true, and how much of it is just suggestions, and how much of it is just they're just guideposts by infallible human beings, even though stuff that is being written in all the books and written down, what is actually true. I have to go out and have to experiment with it. So one of the first things that was important for me was to kind of figure out, what am I really doing here? What's my purpose in learning all this? And I realized that my own reason for studying all this was I wanted to learn how to live as long as I could without pharmaceutical drugs, without pain, and with all my organs and my mental faculties intact. That was it. That was really what I was up to. And even as I say that, it sounds so simplistic, like, well, okay, well, that's kind of what you were doing. But the distinction was so critical for me. It still is to this day, because what it allowed me to do was make a split between ideology and then what actually worked every day in my life. And this started to apply in every single facet of my life, not just, diet and lifestyle, but every aspect, how I worked, where I worked, so forth. What was my real goal here, and how could I split that from the ideologies and the, what I was being taught. So I really got that what I was looking for were tools of longevity. And that shift was huge for me. Huge, huge, huge. And so I realized that as a student of learning, I was interested in the empirical, interested in actually of the observational in my own body. I was a walking petri dish. We're all walking petri dishes, and we have to try stuff out. And I really started to see that I didn't like the labels of I am a macrobiotic, I am a Republican, or I'm a socialist, or I'm a vegan, or I'm a New York Giants, Broncos, Bears fan, or whatever. I was not interested in the label. I was interested in seeing what worked. And the only way I could really see what worked was to try stuff out. And there's as I was, thinking about this, what I was thinking about, when you were saying, you can talk about any, one of the things that came up for me was a definition of dogma that I heard from one of my favorite guys recently in the last 10 years. And he said, dogma is living with the results of other people's thinking. Dogma is living with the results of others people's thinking. And I remember when he said that on a stage. He actually said it was Steve Jobs, and he said it during he was invited to speak for a graduation class, I think at Stanford, back in the 1990s, or maybe it was early 2000s, something like that. But that just struck me, because I thought I don't want to live with other people's thinking. I want to use other people's thinking as guideposts, but I'm interested in seeing what works for me. And again, it was revolutionary for me. And, it just allowed me to discard things, that I found that didn't work. And, I think the last turning point too for me, because remember, I went into macrobiotics thinking this is the answer. This is the absolute truth to all things everywhere. It was kind of like my Bible when I went into it. And I don't know about you, but, at some point you realize every Bible out there is infallible. It's written by human beings doing the best job that they can at the best that they got, So that was really critical. And I think what really, it's weird to say it helped me, but I think what finally I saw was when I realized that over time, I wasn't seeing any long time, deeply committed macrobiotic people living to 110 or 120. And that was my original purpose. I thought I want to see. I think we can last that long if we can figure out the keys to it. And I wasn't seeing that. I still not seeing that. I haven't met anyone that's 110 who's been following macrobiotic principles a long time. And in fact, on the contrary, I was seeing people I knew, people I loved, who were deeply committed macrobiotic people die at pretty standard diseases in pretty standard timelines. And in fact, my own non-macrobiotic grandparents had lived beyond all those people, eating whatever the hell they were eating and living, for their lifestyle. So, what that allowed me to do is realize, okay, so there's some room for improvement and there's some room for some experiment. So I think what I want to do here is do just as if you guys were all nice, the fellow students that I went to school with, and they were saying, hey, how's it going? What has worked for you? What has remained true and useful and stood the test of time? Because that's what I would like to hear from other people. How's it going? What have you found at work? Then I can take notes and try those things out. And so there are some that have been absolutely instrumental, and I owe it to those that philosophy, those books, those teachers, they gave the guidepost in this direction. And one of them, probably the most powerful one, is the power of reversing a diseased state. And again, it sounds so simplistic until you meet people who do not think that way, and who, because they have access to whatever, healthcare or good insurance or something, they go to doctors so fast. They have the flu, they go to a doctor. The child has the cold, they go to a doctor. I've never done that. I've always known, if I get sick, my first question is, what did I do to create the condition that allowed this to happen, and what can I do to reverse out of it? Where do I need to go? And it's like a reversing process. It's like turning the car in reverse and going back. And I learned that in Macrobiotics, that virtually every digestive problem or skin problem and so much more is the result of my own metabolic toxic overload, which stems largely from my diet, or where I'm living, or the bed I'm sleeping in, or the room that I'm in, or the environment I'm in. It's got mold or whatever, or the people I'm around, whatever. All that creates this internal walking condition. I am my own ocean, and I've got to change that and reverse that and get out of that. And it is the single reason I have remained, I'm 65 years old. I have remained drug-free and pain-free and disease-free, except for small little times, when I'm in trouble and I reverse out of them. But, that's pretty powerful. And I think the second thing that I got that started in Macrobiotics, but then I actually saw it, but I owe it to Macrobiotics, was the whole internal terrain model. The idea of looking at all of the connected fluids in the body, anything that's liquid, blood, lymph, gastric juices, interstitial fluids, all that, as this internal ocean, this internal terrain, and to know that you've got the dials to control that. And just like a fish tank, you can kill the fish by creating a certain terrain in that water, or you can save the fish by changing the terrain. And a lot of it, I always still look at it kind of like the soil of a garden, or the soil of a forest. If you want better plants, create better soil. We've all done that, where you're growing plants and the plant is suffering somehow, so you change the soil. And you don't paint it green. You just change your soil, and sometimes you can save that plant. So that was the second one. The third one surprised me, and I'm really glad to see Kerry Loeb on here, because I hope you guys see his talk, because he knows exactly. And we've talked about this. I've known Kerry for decades, and we talk about this a lot. And it's this hidden power of the press and release bodywork. I say press and release. It doesn't have a name to it, because there's a lot of different types of bodywork that use the press and the release approach to it. And that's Thai massage, shiatsu, douyin, Chinese massage, acupuncture. I hear someone else talking. There you go. And I actually studied Rolfing. After I went to the Kushi Institute, I became very fascinated with Rolfing, a type of. So I paid $10,000 to go to that school. I graduated from the Rolf Institute in Boulder. It was a very difficult school to go through, and I still think shiatsu style massage is more effective when it comes to human longevity. And I think it breaks up adhesions. I think adhesions stops the flow of innervation, nerve flow and fluid flow. And it has absolutely been central to my own health. And I think the biggest problem for people to really grasp how powerful it is they don't do it enough. They're using the model that I got to go out and spend $120 or $80 or $150 for an hour to go see someone. I have to make an appointment and go see someone, and I can't afford it. So I only get to go once a month or twice a month or 6 times a year. And that's nonsense. And that's why I hope people listen to Kerry Loeb's talk, because you have to learn how to do it on yourself, and you have to find a partner. And I am fortunate enough to have a wife that walks on me. And I mean 5 nights a week, we are working on each other. We just do it for 20 minutes, but it absolutely puts her to sleep. It totally relaxes her system. And we take turns, which is great. Um, and, and, uh, and then when it's my turn, I'm 6'8", I'm 220 pounds. I need really, really deep pressure. You can't get in there with your thumbs. I want someone to walk on me. And I'm telling you, and she will attest to this. When she gets done with 20 minutes of walking on my spine and then walking down my legs, I get a lot of tension in my legs. There's moments when I get off that mat and I say, I swear to God, you've just given me 6 months more of longevity. It's like everything changes. So to me, it's one of the most underutilized aspects of what I learned from Macrobiotics. It's so extraordinary. And I would just invite everybody, if you want to change your life, find a partner. And you don't have to be good at it. That's what's so cool. You really don't. It's a very sloppy thing. You can be really, really sloppy. You don't have to be exact. You don't even have to know where the meridians are. Forget it. Just work down the spine. If you're a big person and you have someone that can't, teach them how to walk on you. And by walking, and maybe they can't put all their weight on, but they use their softness of their foot and go down. And they don't have to know a damn thing. That's what's so cool about it. You can be really, really sloppy about it and still get extraordinary health changing, life changing, add years to your life benefits from it. So that's really powerful to me. Let's see. Okay, let me go. Those are the main things. And they've been absolutely critical. Here's the things that I was taught or were implied to me when I was at school that I absolutely found were incorrect from those early teachings. The first one was water. When I was going to the school back in the day, and this is, even going, and George Oshawa talked about it. They all talked about limiting your water intake. I think this is the biggest mistake Macrobiotics ever taught. And in fact, I think it actually put a lot of people to an early grave. I believe, and I've, in my own body, I use it. I think that one of the keys to longevity is keeping the river flowing. Your kidneys need an extraordinary amount of water in it. It's too easy for everything to become slowed down into a sludge. And I look back at the photographs of those, during my class. What I see is a bunch of dehydrated people. I can see it in their face. I can see it in their skin, all of it. And it took me a while to figure that out. And in fact, it was a couple of books where it just really screamed from the top of the rooftops. It said, you have got to, you're all dehydrated. And I started following that, and oh my gosh, what a difference it makes. You can heal yourself just by getting hydrated again. And so, I mean, this is the truth. For 20 some years, I drink a gallon a day. I fill it up in the morning and I drink that every day. And I've got to drink it before 7 o'clock at night, or I'm up all night, peeing. And I drink a gallon of water every day. That's all there is. And now there's other things I drink. There's tea, there's water in the foods that I eat. There's fruits that I eat. But besides all of that, I drink a gallon a day. And if you want to feel, it's a great experiment to have. Just get a hydration jug, fill it up with, say, 3 liters, 4 liters, whatever, somewhere around there. I'm a big guy, so I drink 4 quarts, gallon a day. That works pretty well for me. And do it for 30 days and watch the difference in your joints, in your thinking, in your movement, everything. Extraordinarily powerful. Oil. Wow. I think we got oil wrong. One, I didn't, there was just hardly any oil in any of the, in any of the recipes, all that. And I've become a big, big oil fan. And I look to Greece and a lot of the country, like Greece and Spain and places. Yeah, right on, Carol. It's like, those countries knew it. They knew it. You want those lipids running through your system. I think I probably eat, I'm not kidding, no exaggeration, 9 to 12 times as much oil as what I used to back then. I eat a lot of oil. And I think too, and I think now they've corrected this from what I understand, but we were experimenting with a lot of the vegetable oils that we thought because it's vegetarian, they were good, like safflower and sunflower or corn oil. I would never touch those things at this point. Never. I don't think they're any good for you. I really don't. I think you have to beat up those plants so severely to get the oil out of them, to get the lipids out of them. That if we saw the process that you have to go through to get corn oil, you would never put corn oil in your body again. And I think actually it's that another place that they really made a mistake was they kind of poo-pooed the idea of saturated fats. Well, all of the longest living cultures have saturated fats, not too much of them, but some. I wouldn't eat pig fat. I don't think that's probably the best way to get saturated fat, but there's a lot of great saturated fats out there that I think are very beneficial. And a lot of the technologies and the research being done has shown this out. I eat avocados all the time. I eat coconut butter. I eat a little butter and I eat a bit of ghee. And I think all of that serves me well. I think it's really, really good for me. Okay, this is one that I'll never get agreement with Macrobiotic people on, but I just don't think it's true. And that's the concept of eating locally. Okay, it's a really cool concept. It just has a nice rhythm to it. I think eating locally, yeah, sure, go and eat locally. But even back when we were macrobiotic, I mean, if you started to really calculate how far away some of these foods were, and they were not from the climates that I was in. So I have found that it just isn't true. I have eaten citrus fruit. I lived in Colorado. I lived at 10,000 feet in Colorado for years. I lived at 6,000 feet and 5,000 feet in Colorado. Big, big mountains, a lot of winter and all that. I ate citrus every single day. Still do. Now I actually live in Colorado, down here in Florida, but same way. I think eating locally, look, we're all living in atmosphere controlled environments most of the day. All of us right now are not sitting out in a tent, exposed to the elements. So right away, we've twisted that enough where we are not living in the environments that are outside. We're not sweating under the sun. We're not shivering under the cold. And so I think the idea of eating locally no longer applies to humans. We've grown beyond that. And I think there's some great food that grows in different environments that add to our longevity. Again, everything for me is measured against this idea. I want to live as long as I can with no pain, with no drugs, with all my organs and mental faculties intact. And I think there's a lot that we can eat from around the world that helps us do that. And that brings me to the idea of eating fruit. I just haven't found that to be accurate at all. It does not make me yin. It does not make me flaky or I can't think. It doesn't thin me out too much. I think fresh fruit is one of the keys to longevity. Perhaps you can overdo it. I don't know. I don't eat that much of it, but I eat it almost every day. And if you're like trimming back, the other cool thing about fruit is that it really, if you've got a sweet tooth, I don't have a sweet tooth. I eat fruit every day. But I don't go for big sweets. I don't go for ice cream or cakes, or I don't get any attraction to that stuff at all. And that may be because I have access to a quick fuel all the time. I'll eat a banana if I'm really, really needing something between meals. I'll eat an apple. I will spend some days where I just feel like all I want to do from the morning until dinner is I just want to eat apples. That malic acid is one of the best liver cleansers in the world, and sometimes really, really works. It does. The idea that it makes you too yin or too something, I just haven't found it true. And I think people suffer because of that belief. Next one, vegan or not. I don't really, I don't want to go into this one because I think that's more of a philosophical, or it's a big topic. But I think the idea that macrobiotics is vegan, I don't think it's true at all. I remember in my second semester, we ate carp soup. We were there in the class eating, cutting up a carp. I'd never cut up a carp before. Haven't ever since either. But fish stew, oh my God. healing, healing, healing. So good. So I was very strict vegan for 15 years, right at 15 years, almost to the day. And then I got to a place where I just didn't like the association I had with it. And I realized I was kind of trapped in a dogmatic way of thinking about things. And I also wasn't feeling good. I just had reached a place where no matter what I was trying, I just didn't like it. And I'll remember the first time I really branched out and started eating animals again. And it just changed for me. I can't eat a lot. You know, I've played with different amounts. I am my own experiment. I'm my own walking petri dish, and I've tried eating too much, and I don't like the way it feels. And in fact, there's some animal foods I can't eat at all because my joints really ache the next day. I'll notice it. And in fact, I got myself in the worst health crisis I went through was during a period when I was playing with different foods, and I actually was trying to eat red meat for the first time, and my feet swelled up so bad at one point that I could not walk. It was the most pain I'd ever experienced in my life. But Macrobiotics was great. I knew I was responsible for this, and I had to figure out what I needed to reverse back out of. But fish works very well for me. Fowl works very well for me. Soups work very well for me with a little bit of animal food. I don't do it every day. I sometimes go through a period where I am eating all plant-based, but and everyone has to figure that out. But that's a really important one to play with, I think. And I was also completely without dairy at all. I remember I came from Wisconsin, and I was up to my ears in dairy, and pretty bad dairy at that. There was no yogurt, there was no friendly bacteria in any of the dairy products that my poor parents gave me. And so for a while, I looked at it like the devil. I really hated it. And then, it helped when I traveled again overseas, and I met a bunch of people from countries that eat really good quality dairy. And so now, I will play with it once in a while. I can't do very much of it, but I don't mind it sprinkled on the top of a dish, a little bit of, Parmesan cheese or something, or sometimes a bit of really good high quality yogurt works really, really well for me. I have a digestive system that is unbelievable. It's really, really operates well. So I'm okay with it. I can't do a lot, but it's a great, almost like a medicine for me that I like a lot. So that's it. I'm 65. For right or wrong, stupid or not, I have never had health insurance. I've rarely used a professional healthcare provider for any health issues. And I've really used the skills of rebalancing my diet to find homeostasis again. The sickest I ever got in my life was I got a sinus infection. Took me a while, but I think I figured out why I got a sinus infection. I was really doing a lot of salt cleanses, using that device. I forget what it's called. Anyways, I was doing that, and I think I actually infected myself. Anyways, it got so bad that after 6 or 8 months, I was in trouble, and I was so antibiotic because I grew up on antibiotics, and I remember quitting my antibiotics when I went to the Kushi Institute. Probably about a year before that, but I was so against it. And I finally got to the place where I thought, maybe, it's a little bit like, the war you need once in a while. I mean, this is the truth. I went and I got someone else's antibiotics because I didn't have a doctor. I didn't know where to get them. I said, do you have any antibiotics? And I know there's like antibiotics for all sorts of different, but I thought I'll just try it. 8 hours later, 8 hours after taking the antibiotic, my sinus problems were cleared up. I took one more day of it. So I had 2 days. They oftentimes say, hey, I like to take it for 10 days or something. I did 2 days of antibiotics, and it cleared it up. And it was a very sobering, very humbling experience because I realized, you got to really get over that attitude, Scott, that all Western medicine is some kind of evil. I mean, it can absolutely save your life. So it was a very humbling, I had to apologize to the Western medicine at that moment. I realized, sometimes it can really save your butt. And I was very grateful for it. And it only took me 2 days. and then I was, back on track again. So I owe an extraordinary debt to what I learned in macrobiotics, because I learned about self-care. And I would just encourage anyone, who's in that world to be okay with questioning the orthodoxy. It's okay to question all of it. To me, all the teachers, they're dead and gone, but I think all of them would say, yes, this is just what our experience was, and we wrote about it, our best guess, this is what we were doing. But for gosh sakes, carry on and see what works for you. Don't be afraid to rattle the cage of even your hardest earned beliefs of what you think it is. Because to me, that's really, if macrobiotics stands for anything, it's to stand for the exploration of what it's like to live and find your way through it. So thanks for listening.
We really appreciate it, Scott. You really gave us a nice overview of your experience, and it's interesting to hear. You're clear on your ideas, and you've experimented, and you've told us what works for you, and doesn't get any better than that, any more truthful. So really, we appreciate your being here, and it's really great. Thank you, Scott. Thanks so much.
You're welcome. Does anyone have any questions?
Oh yeah, lots of them.
Oh, good.
So I think we're all on the same path. We all want the health and the healing and all that. And did you know Ilani Tov? I don't know if you knew her. She tried so many things. She had juvenile diabetes. And she tried and she was like here and there. And we all thought, oh, she's just trying too much. She's not sticking to macrobiotics. She died, of course. And so how do you know? Besides which, that the body is so complicated. You factor in X, but how do you know it's not Y or ABC? It's so complicated.
Yeah.
I mean, it's fantastic that you did it, but I'd love to know how we could do it.
Well, everyone gets confused at times. And even the teachers that I love and recommend, Virginia Harper is one of the best. There'll be times when we talk and we're laughing over the phone because we're scratching our head going, I don't know what to do next. And there are times when it's very difficult and you're trying different things and the problem persists. So I don't have any easy answer for it. Other than, when I get stuck like that, one of the places I now go to is, where am I not looking? Because I have a belief about that. And that story about the antibiotics was a powerful one. Oh my God, I got so sick. And I was trying for like 8 months. It became ridiculous. And I could have opened up that door a lot sooner, but I had this belief in my head. It was like a framework, a mental framework, and I would not get out of it. So that's why that study of belief systems and examining what is it that we believe is wrong, and then what do we believe that we're absolutely certain is right? Man, that's the first place to look.
So how do you know how much water is too much water? I mean, the kidneys.
I don't think there is. I don't think there is.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely don't. I mean, sure, you can drown yourself. People have, but I mean, I don't believe you can oh, he's sick because he drank too much water. Bull. Absolute bull. Have not found that to be true.
So it doesn't stress the kidneys when you're.
Absolutely not. There's nothing. And I did all the research to look for it's like a river. That's the way I look at it. The kidneys are like a filter. Look at cars. You know what gets cars running well again is new filters. Clean out the filters. And one of the ways you clean out filters is you flush the system. Water is the great solvent. It is what all of life is built on. And no way, the way you clean out the kidneys is run water through them. That's what I've found, my own experience. It did not stress the kidney. What stresses the kidneys is sludge. It's thickness. It's all the things that, it's the metabolic waste that it has to deal with. How do you repair the kidneys? Water. It's the best thing. There's nothing else that can get to it. It only handles the liquids. Everything else is the metabolic waste. You want to flush it through it. What's one of the best ways to get rid of kidney stones? Water, 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 water. You have to dissolve it. And that's why I'm such a fan of lemon juice and lime juice and grapefruit juice. I think they're extraordinary solvents for the body. I really do. I know. It's blasphemy. You tell it to Macrobiotic. It's blasphemy. But yeah, I am constantly experimenting. The more water I put to my body, the better it is. The more I pee, the better it is. The clearer my urine is. I've solved a lot of issues just by doing that. Now, everyone's different. So, don't take my word for it, but try it. If you've never done a month of really heavy duty, conscious, you can't go on, I'll drink a lot of water today, because you won't. I find most humans' thirst mechanism is absolutely broken. You cannot rely on the thirst trigger. You can't. You have to look at that and go, this is what I'm drinking every day, and drink it. You have to carry it with you and do that. Mark it off on a calendar for 30 days. Then see. And if it doesn't work for you, great. You can try something else. But then you tried the experiment.
Hey, Scott.
Thank you.
Yeah, buddy. Hey.
Hey.
Hola.
Wonderful. Great to see you. You and I first met, I believe it was 1985, when you were just getting involved in the Cushy Institute, and I was just getting involved in Macrobiotics at that time. And I've always found you to speak your truth, even if it's blasphemous. And I appreciate it. And it really does follow what George Oshawa would teach, which was non-credo. Question everything. Question everything. So I really appreciate you questioning everything and offering us all some alternatives and some different ways to expand our consciousness to keep questioning things. So thank you for that.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah. Gretchen, you're right. Neti pot. That was what got me in trouble. I'm not against neti pots. I think what happened is I probably, something happened in my neti pot, and then I threw it up through the my nose and got up in there, and it just got stuck, and then I got poisoned by my own neti pot. Yeah. Anything else? I think I'm about to be, my hour's almost over. Yes.
If we're taking diuretics because of the physicians making us, then where should we be looking for why our kidneys can't handle all the water you say we can drink?
That's a good question, and I don't know the answer to it. I don't. I wouldn't. I think you just have to. That might be a situation where you want to get some testing done and figure it out. I don't know. I don't really know the answer to that, and I would hate to give medical advice on that. All I can say is do an experiment. I mean, I think you could do an experiment for like 5 days and see if you see improvement or not. If you don't see improvement, then you realize, okay, maybe in my case, more water through my kidneys is somehow harmful. But as Carrie said, play with it, see what happens. If you've never done it, it's not, I don't think it's going to kill you. Try what it's like to have some kind of flush going through you, just pure water.
Okay.
There's actually a book that I would recommend. It's called Your Body's Many Cries for Water. Your Body's Many Cries for Water. It's the weirdest title. And the guy's name is Dr. Batman. Just look that up, Dr. Batman, because I can never pronounce his last name. He can't even pronounce his last name. It's so weird. And I will tell you, it's one of the most poorly written books. It really could have used an editor. It's a kind of a crazy book, but his ideas is what really cracked open, my thinking around kidneys and water. And that's where I started to see what he was saying. Yeah. Anyone else? Last question.
Any water is good, or mineral waters, or osmos reverse water, Any water is good?
Well, I've tried all sorts of, I did all sorts of different things. Alkaline water, slightly salted water. There's a man named Russell Mariani, who's also a great colleague of Virginia Harper's and mine, good friend of Carrie's and mine. And that he's a believer in putting a pinch of salt in it. I hate the taste of it, so I'd rather salt my food and just drink water. So in the end, I use filtered water, plain and simple. Filtered water, so I know it doesn't have any heavy metals in it, and I just use straight water. But you can play with different, you can try 1 month of that, then 1 month of different water. I don't use gas water, necessarily. I like fizzy water sometimes with drinks and stuff like that. But no, this is just straight filtered water.
Scott, I'm unclear which oils or fats you find beneficial. You said the plant oil.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of olive oil. I like olive oil. I pour olive oil on everything. Sometimes I'll get a dish, much to the amazement of my wife. We'll get a dinner, going, and then I will just pour olive oil over it because I feel like I need it. Straight, raw olive oil. I really like, this is the most blasphemous, I think. I mentioned coconut oil to a well-known macrobiotic teacher, and she was just aghast. She just thought, but coconut oil is, a lot of the long living cultures are using coconut oil, and I like it. I think it's really, really good for you, but you got to play with it. And I really love avocados. I think they're magical. And those are about it. I do a little bit of dark sesame seed oil. I sometimes wonder if sesame seed oil is good for me because it's kind of old, and I don't know. Sometimes it smells a little rancid to me, but that's it. Those are pretty. I've opened up to the idea of a little bit of ghee. There's an organic ghee that I'm able to get. My wife loves it. I think it really helps with our skin. That's also very blasphemous for macrobiotics, is to have any dairy, but I find a little bit of ghee, a little bit of butter useful. I'm going to get hate letters. I know it. Yay. I have detractors.
You're not going to get hate letters from us.
Okay, that's good. I just figure I'll get a letter from, hello,
But-
Scott. This is Ed Esco. I don't know.
But it does fly in the face of yin and yang theory. I mean, with a lot of what you're saying.
Yeah, I don't use a lot of yin yang theory in how I'm feeling. I think it's probably underlying, how I've kept homeostasis, because I think yin yang is trying to describe what homeostasis is. But I think my limited understanding of all that just basically got me in trouble. So at some point I just had to let that go, because yin yang theory says citrus fruits is yin. Well, that certainly isn't my experience in my body. I don't feel yin after I use citrus fruit. I feel alkaline. I feel more alkaline, and I feel it's like a solvent in my system, and I use it a lot. I drink a lot of homemade lemonade. I get these half gallons of lemon juice, mix it with water and a little bit of stevia, and I drink that by the gallons every week. And I think
Stevia too?
Pardon me?
You're saying stevia is okay too? That will fly in the face.
Oh yeah, there we go. That'll fly in the face. Yeah, I do. Come on. I've actually, look, I'm a food manufacturer. I've been making my own formulas for years. And in fact, if you want to see my latest formula, go to, we're just starting a new company, and it's called, I think, I'm just making sure that the website is still up. We just started it. It's called synapticscientific.com. synapticscientific.com. I'll even put it in here. There, I put the website in there. And you'll see I'm a big fan of Ayurvedic herbs and high potency plants. So I make them. And that's really what all stevia is. It's a plant that they've extracted and, used it. So for that sweet tooth, I find it more useful than Yini syrup. Yini syrup's great, but I don't want to drink that much Yini syrup. But I want to be able to have something that has that kind of sweet taste to it.
Where do you live now?
Sarasota, Florida.
Oh,
Yeah, I love it. Yeah. Spent so many decades in the cold, which I loved. And then I got to the point where I thought, no, getting too hard. I'm like Gnat. I want to live in more in the, sun. I miss Israel, Gnat. I loved Israel. I absolutely loved it. I could come back. Yeah.
do you visit Virginia and Nashville?
I have a brother in Knoxville, actually. So I go up to
Not
Tennessee
anywhere
once.
near there.
I know. It's kind of about 200 miles away. Ginny Harper. Do you know Ginny?
Yeah, I live an hour above her
Oh, very nice. Oh, yeah.
in Bowling Green, Kentucky.
Oh, Bowling Green's very nice. You live in
Not from here, but living here now.
Oh, nice. I still remember some of my Hebrew. Actually, no, I don't. I just remember. I used to pick bananas on a kibbutz. Is it because I live in a hotter climate that you can tolerate my water and other stuff? No, for 35 years, 40 years, I lived in Colorado, and none of that changed. I still drank a ton of water. I still ate citrus every day because I lived in a air-conditioned 72 degrees, that controlled the environment. I closed, I would go outside once in a while, but I lived inside. Yes, I would ski. Yes, I'd walk, but then I'd come back inside. I'd sleep 8 hours every night in a moderate temperature environment. So that changed everything. It really does. So you're much more adaptable. If I was camping outside 24/7, for decades, maybe these things wouldn't work, but we don't. And I think we have to factor that in. And again, I'm not suggesting this for anybody. I'm just giving you my 35-year experiment so far. And the funny thing is, talking about longevity is that, until you're 110, you can't really brag about your longevity, because, here I am talking about, I'm on the path of longevity, and I fall over at 6 months dead of, I don't know, a brain aneurysm. And you guys all go, so much for Scott's longevity program. You never know. You can't really ever tell it. You're just doing the best you can. And so far, it's great. I know a lot of people at 65 whose joints don't work, whose mental faculties are starting to fail, whose bodies, are starting to fail. So this is just my experiment so far. Any other questions? Well, Gannett is allowing me to keep going.
Are we having your email address? Can we ever correspond with you?
You'll find me on Facebook. My name is there, and you'll find me also on my website, Synaptic Scientific. You can email us there.
Okay.
I don't do any counseling, thank God.
All right, no,
But yeah, please, stay in touch. I'd love to befriend all of you.
Who is us? Who are you working with?
A colleague who's also been involved in natural sciences for many decades. He's a great formulator as well. The formulator I use is actually an Indian, born and raised Indian, double PhD. He's an absolute genius when it comes to botany and understanding Ayurvedic medicine and finding ways to potentize a lot of the standard Ayurvedic plants, such as Bacopa monieri, Gotakolo, and that's our first one. We're coming out with what we're calling cognition, and it's incredible. Do I have it here? No, I think I just finished my last sample, but it's great. It's a non-caffeinated cognition booster. You feel it immediately. It's really nice, and it's very neuroprotective, but it really makes you want to do things like get writing done or get projects done. It's quite powerful, and that should be coming out in about 2 months.
How how does that go with Macrobiotics' belief system that supplements, you just need food, not supplements? What is that?
I haven't found that to be true. I'm a big fan of supplements. I've been eating blue-green algae, which only comes in dried format for decades. And I think it's actually one of the reasons I'm healthy.
So you've gone beyond Macrobiotics, then you're doing supplements and.
Is it beyond Macrobiotics? I don't know. Is there a cutoff place where you go?
Food. It's not a food, or it's not a food as you get it from nature.
Fair enough, but does that mean it's not macrobiotic? I don't know. I don't know who controls the definition of macrobiotics anymore, so I would question that. I think my definition of macrobiotics is figuring out how to live a long and healthy life, period.
Based on food?
Largely based on, whatever alters your internal terrain. And yeah, I'm a big fan of supplements, huge fan of supplements, mainly whole food supplements, green foods, barley grass, blue-green algae. But man, probiotics, oh my gosh, they can be life-changing. I've gone through periods where I am eating probiotics and my digestion, I should be in a study somewhere. My digestion is awesome at 65. And, and a lot of it's because I will do supplementation during different parts. Yeah.
So how do you research which supplements and what are you taking for probiotics?
It changes. It's a vast changing technology, out there. A lot of them are, they require technology. So you have to kind of up the game. So I'll ask people. That's why I'm always, I'll communicate with Jenny and I'll communicate with Carrie and say, hey, have you tried, are you doing any enzymes? What's your enzyme that you found really good? And then you go online and you research it. And then you ask friends. That's what I do. I will look around and I'll play around with different ones. Same with blue-green algae, same with the green plants, same with smoothies, things like that. And I'm a big, here, this is just one example. This is I don't know if it's backwards or not. Saw palmetto. It's very, very good for the kidneys. I've never used it, but as I age, I will notice my urine flow isn't what it was in my 20s. And I think, well, is there a way to improve that? Can I improve my, my urine flow? So I've been for the last, just like the last month, been trying that. Don't know if it's, really powerful or not. What else do I try? I love some of the brain formulas, the choline and stuff like that. They're not whole foods, but I'm not trapped by that. I'm okay with extractions. Look, if you've ever had a cup of coffee, you're playing with extractions. If you've ever had a cup of tea, you're playing with extractions. You're not playing with whole foods. You're playing with extractions. You're doing your extractions yourself in your kitchen. You're pulling out, you're using just the leaves. You're putting them in hot water, which is extracting only certain chemicals out of that plant and discarding the rest and drinking the tea. Welcome to not whole foods.
I'm going back. So what's your probiotic that you're enjoying?
Actually, I haven't taken probiotics for probably 8 months. So I don't know I don't have any one that I would recommend. Do you live here in the States, Clara?
No, I'm in Israel. Come back.
Israel.
Come visit us again.
I would love that. Wouldn't that be great? Oh, I would love that. That'd be fun. Okay. We'll put that in the future, possibility here. I'd love to take my wife there. She's never been there. So I think she would enjoy it a lot. I love Israel. I have such a bond to it. Working at the kibbutz really, tied me in. I'm like right there. So I don't know, ask around. And, you can't go wrong. You just might try one that might be not as good for you as it would for others.
It's not for myself, I'm concerned, but thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah.
Right.
Okay, well, it's been wonderful. You've gotten great response and you really make us think, and that's what it's all about. So Judy Waxman is up now, and I think that I've been able to talk her how to explain to her how to get on. So she'll be coming up. And again, Scott, a big thanks.
Thanks for